Thank you for tuning in to the Catch a Lift Fund's Coach's Corner podcast. We hope you enjoy today's episode and will consider supporting the Catch a Lift Fund and the veterans we serve. Visit our website for more information about our programs at catchaliftfund.org. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or suicidal thoughts, please call 988 or the Veterans Crisis Line 988, followed immediately by the number 1. The views and opinions expressed during the Coach's Corner podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the Catch a Lift Fund. The Catch a Lift Fund does not verify or warrant the truth or accuracy of statements made during the podcast, and statements therein are not to be construed as an official policy or position of the Catch a Lift Fund. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and nothing herein should be construed as health, medical, or other professional advice. The Coach's Corner is a place for veterans to connect, heal, and share their stories. I'm Melissa Luke, the host of the Coach's Corner podcast. I am a U.S. Army Iraq War veteran, coach, and program director for the Catch a Lift Fund. The Coach's Corner is sponsored by ID Technologies. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Welcome back to another episode of the Coach's Corner. This week we're excited to welcome Dustin Thomas. Dustin is a U.S. Air Force veteran, CAL veteran athlete, and a mechanical systems engineer. Welcome to this week's episode of the Coach's Corner. Dustin, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Hey, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
We're excited to talk with you today. Let's get right into it.
Okay.
Dustin, you spent 5 years in the U.S. Air Force. Talk to us about what that experience was like and what you remember most about the time during your service.
Going into the military, I didn't have a lot of direction, and I've amazingly followed my brother's footsteps. And so going in, it was kind of an experience of not knowing what to look forward to. And unfortunately, I didn't transition very well going right in. And it was, of course, before September 11th. I joined in 1999. And I was going through some transitional aches and pains. And, of course, that horrible day happened, and we had that attack on our country. And unfortunately, for what happened, my side of it actually kind of ignited everything and really gave me pride and kind of reminded me what I was doing and why I was there. And so I found my direction again. So that was one good thing about, the situation where I was able to find myself.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Dustin.
Of course.
It's like we said, you would go on to serve 5 years in the Air Force, and after getting out, you would utilize your GI Bill. What really drove you to pursue that and make that decision?
I floundered a little bit right after getting out of the military, didn't hit the ground running like I hoped, and found myself working on cars for a living, built my way up from changing oil to eventually becoming a master technician at Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, wow.
And I always liked mechanical things, and that kind of gave me a sense of accomplishment repairing cars. And I wanted to try to use my GI Bill to try to finish school and go through with that. And it's hard to go to school at the same time and,
Right.
cut away, especially with responsibilities and everybody's living paycheck to paycheck and things like that. So luckily, on this, my wife is a professor at the local university, and she pushed for me to use my GI Bill, my benefits, and utilize that because, obviously you need your support from home, and she was
For sure.
that and everything for me. And I got in with a really good Veteran Success Center at University of South Carolina in Aiken with Robert Murphy. He's an amazing person that helped me get into everything, and he kind of gave me a window of what I could accomplish with the assistance that I had through Montgomery GI Bill, the post 9/11. And once I finished using that, I had to tie into vocational rehabilitation.
Incredible. I want to kind of ask you about both of those, Dustin. Well, first of all, what advice would you have for other veterans, who haven't used their GI Bill yet or are kind of thinking about it, maybe are a little bit hesitant?
Um, it seems scary. I absolutely understand it, and I mean, I'm there with you. It's hard to take away and go, okay, well, I'm gonna potentially come away from this stability that I have in what I've worked for so far, and go back to being a student. And it's
Yeah,
also hard to be a later in life student. I mean, I
right.
graduated at 41. And most of the kids that I was in the class with, I mean, that's the way it feels like. They are
Yeah,
kids.
right.
Um, they were born the same year I graduated high school, and so that's reality for you.
Right.
But it is absolutely worth it. I mean, I went from working on cars that would, while it was sustainable, and I liked working for Mercedes Benz, and there was a lot of fun with that. It's hard on your body, and
Oh, I'm
it's
sure.
hard to see yourself doing that at 60 plus years old. There's not a lot of old technicians that are doing really well, and so it gets you stability. And if you can find it, there are tons of veteran success centers out there that really help with finding the right program for the veteran, and good counselors out there and programs like Catch a Lift and stuff like that will help guide to people to better themselves and get that stability.
That's tremendous. Thank you for talking on that, Dustin. Would you speak a little bit about your experience using the Voc Rehab program?
Absolutely. It was much different than post 9/11 GI Bill. It took a long process with getting all the paperwork done. Um, One of the things, luckily, I live in an area that mechanical engineering is very popular. It's actually 10th in the United States for earning for mechanical engineers
Oh,
for
wow.
the locations. And so that's some of the information you have to look up. You have to go into the Department of Labor and show that what you're wanting to do is a viable option for you. And and you have to show why you can't continue doing what you're doing. And so it is a long process,
Okay.
but it's an employment program. It is not an education program. So
Okay.
they will do what they need to do to get that employment. And so if that means supplying a computer or some equipment, they'll do it. And that's one of the things where I had to learn, because it's not just a stipend per month and
Right.
tuition paying. So
That's incredible. Yeah, we've been honored to have several veterans on the program over the last couple years. Who have taken advantage of Voc Rehab. And we've definitely heard good things. So that's great to hear about your experience with it too. Uh, was mechanical engineering something that was kind of in the back of your head, Dustin? From like you said, you absolutely loved working on cars. You were a technician and everything. Was it just kind of a natural transition over there, or what really was the push behind mechanical engineering specifically?
well, in my idea, because I'm a car gearhead, petrol head, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
I always thought that I was going to be a mechanical engineer with cars, or race, environment with designing race car parts or something like that. And because most technicians, anybody who works on cars, they get frustrated at how the engineers design the car, because they'll get halfway into repairing something, and how am I supposed to pull this bolt out when I can't even reach it, type thing.
right, right.
And so that kind of drove me in that direction and my enjoyment of messing with cars. But actually, while I was in school, I got the opportunity to work on the Savannah River site, where I work now, as a co-op. They have a wonderful veteran program where they bring out students and you can work on the site. And it kind of opened my eyes up to more options, and much more stable and less driven to production, which production is a different world than, I'm a government contract company.
Okay, very cool. So, and Dustin, you touched on it a little bit, right? Like when you said, when you graduated, you were 41 and, you were in school with kids, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to us a little bit more, though, about that experience. It was about a 5-year period after service when you would go back to school. What was that like just to, get into that routine, classes, homework, papers, and all of that?
It was a huge transition. I actually went to school twice. The first time I went was about 5 years after I got out, and it was a failed attempt. I went into it wholeheartedly and tried to do the best I could, but responsibilities kicked in, and
Yeah.
my first divorce, and it fell apart. I mean, and luckily at that time I had professors that were like, "Hey, you just need to step back and not ruin your GPA, and and you're going through a lot." And so it was that was in 2008 when we were having all the wonderful 2008 2009 time frame. And so that was a hard time for everybody with
Right.
financial stuff. And so
Absolutely.
I had to step back, go back to work as a technician, and it wasn't until 2017 that I got going again. And it was, it again, it's stepping away from what you know and what you're doing. And at the time, I was making, not bad money. I mean, as a technician, a master technician at Mercedes, I was making, 55,000 a year, pretty steadily.
Right.
And so now I'm going to go to school with, again, these young people that are often they're forced to go because their parents told them to go, and they
For
don't
sure.
care about doing the homework, or passing this quiz isn't a big deal to them. And but I went with a fire under my ass, and and I'm here to get it done, attitude. So I sat in the
Yeah.
front in every class, and made friends with some guys that are some very similar situation, veterans, that we all went through every class together and transitioned and everything. So that was really cool. But having a steady group that you can study with and all that stuff really help you get through it.
Dustin, talk to us about how you feel your time in the military prepared you to go back to school later in life and really, like you said, put your head down and get that degree done.
Yeah, I think it really was pivotal in my life. Those of us who have served and people who have traveled the world or seen different cultures have seen a lot of things that we don't want to do or we don't want to be involved with. And the stressful life of, being in the military or in a different career that's not doing so well. And so that was really my drive. Luckily, my wife is extremely supportive, and she helped me get through those times when, studying just felt like it was a bear, and, like I got to pass this test and move on. But again, you don't want to go back. A lot of things that you don't want to do. And this is the path forward that, it does pay off. It's extremely hard, but it pays off.
Dustin, so many veterans in our program and just in our community of at large of veterans, right? So many are actively in school right now, and it is difficult for a lot of folks. I know myself. I attempted to go back to college right after Iraq, and there was definitely a lot that made that not a good decision at that time. But it definitely was. It was a culture shock from where I was, right? To where these young people were, and even though I was only a few years older than them at this time, just really did not feel like I fit in, and I know there are a lot of veterans that do struggle kind of with that, like finding your place, at college or these universities. What would you tell to veterans who are kind of struggling that are already enrolled in college?
First, I would look into resources. Luckily, at University of South Carolina in Aiken, there's a wonderful Veteran Success Center it's veteran run, and there's lots of resources there that will help you study. They just as simple little things like you can print for free, which I know it seems silly, but that's something that other students are stressing out about.
Right.
And you can go in there and use that space. It was a safe space for veterans and families related to veterans. And I will say that when I transferred to Columbia to finish my degree, their program sucked, to be honest. I mean, they basically had a closet in the library that, didn't offer the same. So if you have that choice, I would choose a university or a college or a school that has a good Veteran Success Center. I think that would, it's pivotal. Like it will definitely change the ability to finish, in your terms instead of being forced in a certain situation.
Right.
And of course, if that's not an option, mentors. I try to be a mentor for veterans in my local area. Telling them about programs that I'm involved with and showing that there's options as far as things going on. And even if it's just people talking to each other.
Yeah.
Because I've found that just the being involved with a peer group with similar life experiences or reactions and stuff like that, it helps so much. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're definitely really fortunate right now where we are, in kind of time and space, and that there are so many unique resources that are available to us. And it's like if you just start digging a little bit and start asking around within the community, even just within our Catch a Lift community, right? Community is one of our four core pillars, and
Absolutely.
so many folks are in school and stuff, and so we're so blessed to have veterans like you, Dustin, in the program, that can be that leader, that can be that mentor, and show that there is a way through this.
Yeah.
So it's a good time. It's a good time to be a veteran and moving forward.
And it's so heartbreaking I mean, I run into veterans often, and don't get me wrong, they've got the heart and they've got the drive, but they may not have ended up in the best place when they got out.
Absolutely. Yes.
And and they're dealing with their own stuff with service and connected injuries and
Right.
and stress of things like that. I mean, it's hard enough, and so it definitely helps to have other veterans out there kind of watching out or sharing experiences.
Absolutely. It certainly does. So, Dustin, you already mentioned it, but you're currently a mechanical engineer for the Savannah River site. Would you talk to us about what the Savannah River site is?
Absolutely. It was established in 1950 with the rise of the Cold War as a reaction to the nation's arsenal need for plutonium and uranium for weapons. And during the creation of those weapons and projects, they created a lot of waste. And unfortunately, that's what we deal with now for the vast majority of it is we basically try to store and solidify and make the waste as safe as possible. There's processes with that, and so it's a very large facility, and they employ a lot of people everybody here has a very good job, very stable, and it's very safe. I mean, it kind of scared the crap out of me when I first heard about it.
Yeah, it sounds a little scary. I'm not going to lie.
Well, and that's mainly because outside looking in type thing, but we're extremely safe. I was, because like I said, I went to school with the idea of I'm going to work on cars, not I'm going to work with nuclear waste, but they don't let us near it. It's not like you're not doing silly stuff. I mean, they're very protective and very safe. So I highly suggest people look into contract work with the government. Cybersecurity is such a huge thing right now as well in our local area. There's schools popping up left and right for the need that we have, Yeah,
so. That's tremendous to hear. Dustin, walk us through, if you would, a little bit of your day-to-day at work. What are you doing?
Absolutely. Luckily, I work with a 4-10 schedule that's pretty flexible. So usually I get up at 4 in the morning and come in. I'm one of those people that I get up early so I can get off early type thing.
Yeah.
And come into work, which is a long drive from everywhere. It's out in the middle of nowhere. But it's a very large facility with lots of trees, kind of like most military bases.
Right.
And, and they have pockets of buildings and stuff like that. And I work in an office. And as an engineer, I will be brought a problem, a pump failing or something like that. And it's my job to assess the situation and find a pump that does the same job, or design a system that does a task that's need to be done, whether they need to flow water somewhere or something like that. And so it doesn't look like a lot when you kind of look from the outside in, but I mean, because it's a really big area. And
sure.
And my company alone, I believe, employs over 5,000 people. So
holy cow! Wow.
Yeah. So yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a pretty big place.
That's very cool. Looking at that, this position that you're in now, Dustin, how did your military experience prepare you for this?
It's actually very similar. There's a lot of red tape, just like all government jobs.
Sure, right.
And so I think that actually gives us a leg up, where a lot of the civilians coming in, they're like, why can't we just do the thing? And, those of us who served, we know that it's not up to let's just pop over here and do this job real quick.
Oh, yeah.
We got to get the approvals of a whole committee of people first. And, the budgeting is all government based. So, of course they go through all that. make sure that everybody's on board before we lift a finger. And so sometimes a very simple task can take weeks. And so
Yeah.
it can be silly sometimes, it feels like.
I'm sure pretty much any veteran listening, that's going to make sense to them, right? Because we
Absolutely.
all dealt with that in some type of capacity, right? In
Yeah.
our various
Yeah.
branches and MOSs from the outside. It's like this should be a very simple thing to execute, and in reality, there's a lot of steps and folks it's got to go through.
Sure. And the hard part for me too, coming from the engineer or from the technician world, was that I was used to turning the wrenches myself. I would see the
Yeah,
problem and okay, there's the leak. Let me go take these bolts out, replace the part, and it's all good to go. And very quick, multi-hour job or something like that. Where now we'll see the leak. There's the leak. It's easy to see. There's the tools. I'm not allowed to touch tools as an engineer. And so it's like I pointed out to the maintenance guys, and they'll go, okay, I see the problem. I agree with you, but you need to write a work request, and we need to get that work request approved. And of course, if it's a safety issue, then things are a little different. But
I'm sure.
in the areas that I work, it is not ever an issue like that. So.
Dustin, what's your favorite part about your day to day, about your job that you hold now?
Really, the stability is so nice. I mean, this isn't the most exciting job. It's not something I get up and I go, oh boy, I'm making a change today, or making a difference. But it is making a difference. It's just very long term. It takes years for things to happen out here. But really, the biggest thing for me is the stability. I have wonderful benefits. I work 4 days a week instead of 6.
Yeah.
And great retirement building that they really help us with our 401k and everything like that. So the benefits are wonderful, and I get all the government holidays off too. So
Yeah, that's tremendous to hear. Good for
yeah.
you, Dustin.
Well, thank you.
Dustin, speak to any veterans that are interested in getting into a similar line of work as that you're in now. What would you say to them?
Honestly, I would say that there's options out there, and there's lots of programs out there that will provide that stability, that will give you that fulfillment and work. It may not be the most exciting job, but you're used to doing that. You're
Yeah.
used to going
Right.
to places that you don't like going, that nobody likes going, and doing jobs that, frankly, nobody wants to do. And so the fact that you're willing to put up with that or do that gives you a leg up. And so instead of some kid, I'll say that again, that's coming out of high school that has no life experiences, and sure, they can go into school and they can get started sooner than you can. You're coming in with real world experience and a drive to do a job that you may not care about. And so that's going to give you that performance boost over them. And most of the people out here that I work with love having veterans. And so you have that opportunity going in as well, that it puts you in a different light. So you can go in there and get the job done instead of complaining about it.
Yeah, I think that, no veteran should ever sell themselves short, right? In any capacity, and you just highlighted so many reasons why. Like, we could literally bullet that out and send it to our community, because we really do have such a big leg up on the civilian population. So that's really cool to hear your experiences with that as well.
Of course.
I want to switch gears a little bit, Dustin, and talk to you about physical fitness and healing through movement and different hobbies that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So, how have your physical activity and different hobbies that you've pursued allowed you to find passion in your everyday life post-service, Dustin?
Well, I'd have to say that right after service, I didn't have the best way of dealing with stress, and I ended up gaining a lot of weight and not being very active. Was very sedimentary, like sitting around and playing video games and stressed out and stuff like that. And really, once I got back into being active is when I could release stress and kind of unplug from the daily stuff. And I found that getting back into mountain biking, which was one of my early hobbies that I really enjoyed, has given me an outlet and kind of branched me out into other outlets as well, that gives me that feeling of success in where I've done races or I've done events, and going through that as well as, you kind of have a stressful day and you go out there and you pump it out. You get out in the woods and you get away from all the noise, because
Yeah.
that's one of the things that gets me, is all the chatter and the honking and the, just the mechanicalness of things.
Right. Absolutely.
So you get out in nature and it just unplug, first of all. And then, you push yourself physically to a point where you're gasping for air, and it, gives you that success feeling of like, I just did that. And so I've kind of become addicted to those things and that feeling. So now I find myself plugging into these options, whenever I find some kind of opportunity to go do a Spartan race, or, some kind of obstacle course race, or, get out there and go hiking and, camping overnight and stuff like that, where
Yeah.
kind of getting away from everything, it really does a lot for me. And so I find myself looking for that instead of one more thing to plug into.
Yeah. That's so cool. Definitely going to come back, talk about the mountain biking and some of this different stuff here in a minute. But talk to us about scuba diving, Dustin. How did you
Oh
get
yeah.
introduced to that?
Well, as a kid of the '80s, my parents were scuba divers, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it was I was always the kid who was too small to go, and so I was drugged to different places and left on the beach while they went off in a boat. And so I was always curious about it, and I
Yeah.
love wildlife, and I love reef tanks. I had saltwater reef tanks for a while. It's just a very expensive hobby to have,
I'm
and
sure. Yeah.
so actually, right after graduation, my wife gave scuba certification to me as my graduation gift, because I've talked about it so
That's
many times.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was amazing. And so, it was a process of going through and learning how to do it safely and everything. And we have a really good program here where we actually do our certifying dive in the local lake, where there's
Oh
a
my gosh.
airplane underwater. And so,
Really?
yeah, so we do a lot of that stuff, and got certified, and found that getting underwater, which I love to swim anyway, but getting down and just not feeling that urge to rush back to the surface to gasp for air, kind of again let me unplug. I mean, there's not a lot of noise down there, and there's not a lot of going on. You have fish and stuff, but it's
Yeah.
beautiful, and things are curious, and it's a different world. And so you kind of, while being able to unplug from things, you kind of able to be curious again, which I love, being curious about stuff.
So you mentioned and I'm not going to be able to quote it here word for word, but you said something to the effect of you're down there and you don't have that urge to come back up right away, like for air
Yep.
and stuff.
Yep.
Is that something was it instinctual for you on the front end, or was that something you developed as you scuba dived more and more? Was there, or I guess maybe my question is, on the front end, was there panic, your first dive, your first few dives?
No, so personally, the way I started out and when I was a kid, when I would swim, we would always do the thing where you stay underwater as long as you can, and I
Right.
stayed
Yeah.
underwater for longer than you, and
Oh
all
yeah,
that
for
stuff.
sure.
And
Yeah.
swim the lengths of the pool underwater type thing. And so I love that feeling, but it was always this fight of, okay, I can get a few more seconds before I have to rush to the surface
Yeah.
and gasp. And so there was always that feeling. And I'm very comfortable in the water, so I didn't ever have that feeling of like nervousness about it that some people would get. But like most companies out there with the certification process, a lot of it was in a swimming pool inside of the business. And fortunately, in this situation too, the swimming pool is 4 feet deep. And
Okay.
so, like, no matter what, no matter what's going on, put your feet under you and stand up, and you're
Yeah.
fine. So I had an instructor that was very much. I mean, he would put you into situations and swipe your mask off your face and all that stuff as a like, are you ready to deal with this? And here's the most stressful situation, but knowing that no matter what, you put your feet down and you stand
Mm.
up, you're good to go. Now, I mean, the first certification dives going down 30 plus feet
Right.
just to get certified. There was moments of like, because in a lake in the specific dive, it was 10 feet of visibility, and
Okay.
so about while going down this line to the airplane, you're trusting that this rope in front of you is going to take you where you want to go, and you're looking up, and the sun's kind of like the light coming from the sun is kind of diminishing, as you go further and further down. And so there's kind of an eerie moment where it's like all you see is kind of a green haze because it was a green lake, and I could see how that would be stressful.
Right.
And it was kind of a moment of like, all right, I'm going to trust this and I'm going to keep going. And then as soon as you popped out down below, there's an airplane, and it was like, holy crap! Like, and it's just a little Cessna, and it was sunk there by the Army Corps of Engineers, so it's it's there on purpose and everything. But it's one of those things that you kind of like. This is so surreal because you're looking at this airplane and there's fish swimming by you, and like you're like, it's so weird. And they have you sit on the wing of the airplane and go through your exercises, like, because you have to show that you can take the mask off underwater and put it back on and clear it and all that stuff.
Wow.
And so, there's a process, but at that point you've done it so many times, it's kind of repetitive and it feels safe.
Yeah. I would imagine, and I mean, definitely correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't have any experience with scuba diving, but listening to you describe it, you've definitely piqued my interest. But I'm wondering, it seems like it would force you to be mindful.
Of course. I mean, so there's two things. Like for me, it gives you a checklist.
Okay.
Now this checklist is extremely important because it keeps you safe and alive. And so by having this list of like, check your gear, check your buddy's gear, have your buddy check your gear, and those things like that, and doing these repetition stuff, it kind of keys into the military, and it kind of keys into the way my brain works.
Right.
And I like that. So that's part of a calming thing. And then just knowing where you're going, because I mean, I've had some beautiful dives down in Florida that were like surreal. I mean, a 9-foot long eagle ray coming right over the top of our group and eating off of a pillar right next to us, and it was just like,
oh my gosh,
just like you're kind of in your excitement going, ah, you're like,
I'm sure,
but it's not scary. It's not like it's a big shark or anything, but it just kind of like, that's what you're there for. And oh my God, I can't believe this happened. So everybody's coming out of the water going, did you just see that? And and all that stuff. And so it's having that checklist of things, but also having that like, I'm going down to explore. And I think exploring ties into being a kid, ties into being, just being human, wanting to explore and being curious. So, yeah.
That's really cool, Dustin. Thank you so much for talking about that with us.
Of course.
Just to kind of put you on the spot here, you've listed off a bunch of them, right? Before we really got into talking about scuba, you're into so many different outdoor physical type activities. If it's a Saturday and you can go do anything, what's your favorite thing? If you could just pick anything this coming Saturday, what are you going to go do to be physically active outside?
Oh, geez. If it's been raining like it has been, first I cry a little bit about it, but because they shut down all the mountain bike trails when it's raining.
Okay.
Yeah, because to protect them, that it messes with them if you keep using them in the rain. So we do have a local indoor climbing gym that I just tried this past weekend for the first time, so that would be an option. If it's not raining and the trails are open, I'm on the trails. Yeah, it just, fast for me. I'm not going to say I'm fast because, if I could lose another 25 pounds, which I'm working towards, but, then I could be closer to being fast. But, it just going out there and giving it everything I can. And it's an amazing feeling. So, getting into it. And I've one of the things I did with the Catch a Lift program was I ended up getting a gravel bike.
Yeah.
And so that was what I used my money for. And I went on a ride last night. It was a 22-mile gravel ride. And so that's another thing. And doing it with headlights, it was totally dark. And, we rode out to the airport on a dirt road. So it was awesome.
Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible. And from this conversation with you, I can see how that's literally right up your alley.
Oh yeah.
What is it, Dustin? Why biking? Why mountain biking? What is it about it that's such a draw for you?
Um, there's a part of it that's like pushing myself. There's a big part of it that is getting out in nature. The quiet, I'm not gonna lie, the adrenaline of going down a
For
hill
sure.
and almost wrecking 14 times in the last turn, type thing. And so there's that. Um, and I try to slow myself down because sometimes I do the whole like, okay, I could really hurt myself,
Yeah.
but it just mainly it's kind of being outside. If I see deer, which is pretty often, or if I see like on the gravel rides, we saw a fox the other night and a bunch
Oh,
of
awesome.
armadillos, and so
What? Oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
gosh.
and so it just kind of like it's kind of like being scuba diving almost. You're down there and
Yeah.
you kind of see this wildlife doing its thing without a care of whether you're there or not. And so
Yeah.
I really like doing that. So
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So let me ask you this because I'm assuming it's got to be like anything, right? Like you're building up to a point in this, you're learning skills, on the bike to be able to do these different cool things, going down a hill, just wide open or, like you're talking about. What's like the beginner phases of this? How does a person begin mountain biking? What does that look like?
most places have entry level trails.
Okay.
Or a canal. Like we're lucky enough in the CSRA, the Augusta, Georgia area, to have 150 miles of mountain bike trails.
Oh, that's
And
incredible. Wow.
yeah, and we have a Riverwalk Canal trail that is basically sidewalk on dirt. And so getting out there and being comfortable riding on that before you go to the next level is huge. And also just having that drive. I mean, if somebody wants to get a little bit better at going up and down little hills instead of just being on a flat surface, that
Right.
kind of tells you the type of person that's going to enjoy, the next step.
Yeah.
And I mean, having good gear is a huge step in the right direction because there you can easily spend money on gear that will not last,
For sure.
and
Yes.
then you're kind of stuck, because then you have something you can't ride and you can't resell it.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, having some experience with that. Local areas, like for instance, we have a group on Facebook in our area that's called CSRA Bike Swap, where people, when they're upgrading their bikes, they sell their old ones.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And there's never a lack of people that will give you advice in the local area about a bike before you buy it. Instead of necessarily buying the shiniest, pretty one at the dealership or the
Yeah.
sales store that,
Right.
at thousands of dollars, you may be able to get the same one with some blemishes on it that somebody's just tired of,
Yeah.
and especially over the last 2 years with COVID stuff, people bought a ton of bikes that they never used.
Yeah.
And so you can get a damn good deal on a bike, put some air in the tires and go out there and just start riding, putting some miles in.
That's very cool. Thank you for speaking to that, Dustin.
Of course.
So you recently went through Catch a Lift's wellness program. What did you think about your time during that 8-week period?
I really appreciated the coaching from Vivian, the ability to use the programs and the food and the options for recipes and stuff like that in the community. I found that I'm really good at doing tasks or doing a challenge if I have an end goal.
Yeah.
And so, like if I'm preparing myself for a run or a bike ride or something, then I kind of get myself out there and do it more. And so I took those weekly reports as kind of my intermediate challenge.
Yeah.
Each week I have to do 180 minutes, and each week I have to do this and this and this. And I found that I was adding extra things on there because I was like, well,
Right.
I've got 3 days left before Friday, and I've already done my limit, but might as well add something else on there. And so that was
That's so
that was
cool.
really cool. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was, it kind of, I also kind of feel silly about it, but with I use a Garmin to track all my exercise,
Yeah.
and those damn little badges that you get for doing stupid exercises at certain times, they do it for me. I mean,
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
if I can gamify it in some way,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump up and cheer and tell my wife, like, "Hey, babe, I just got this new badge," and she rolls her eyes.
Heck
She's
yeah,
like,
that's awesome though.
"Okay, babe," and she pats me on the head.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm so happy to hear about that experience you have, and I absolutely love, how you approach those reports and did that working with Coach Viv. That's just terrific to hear. And so you already touched on it, Dustin, but I want to talk about the bike a little bit more. So when you did successfully complete that wellness program, you went the home equipment route,
Hmm.
and you got that gravel bike. Talk to us about that bike a little bit more and how it's affected your ability to stay fit.
Great. So I ended up getting it's a Jameis Renegade is the type of gravel bike, and it did cost more than the credit, but you guys made it so simple or so easy to go and apply that towards the bike. And my local bike shop, after I explained what was going on,
Yeah.
they were more than happy to work with it. As soon as you say veteran program, it's almost like their ears get a little bit bigger and their
Yeah.
attention span comes in a little bit because I mean most shops support veterans,
Yeah.
and they want to kind of get involved, and so they helped me out as much as they could, help me pick the right one for me,
Nice. Yeah.
because you can go and spend crazy money,
Right.
and so they applied that credit, and then I paid the rest of it and got going on it. So it's been a dream to come out because I could always ride on gravel trails with my mountain bike, but there's a slight difference with it. I mean, you don't ride as fast on a mountain bike, so you actually slow the whole group down,
Okay.
and they'll leave you behind, or and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure.
that can be
Right.
disheartening. That can be kind of a, a low point because you're trying to do something and be part of the group, and you can't keep up with the group. So
Oh, that's so cool. I'm so glad that you were able to get that gravel bike. And there have been so many veterans, Dustin, that have came through the program specifically in the last 6 to 8 months that have been getting bikes in some capacity.
that's
It's been
awesome.
so cool to hear about. There's so many active veterans right now in the wellness groups, working with various coaches, and they're mountain biking or they're road
Mhm.
biking. So I know that a lot of folks are really going to resonate with you and what you have to say with biking. And I'm not going to lie, I feel fired up inside. I'm like, man, I want to go try this out because it sounds
Oh, it's
so dang
awesome.
cool. Holy
Yeah.
cow.
It's
Woo.
kind of, if you do some research on it, there's a lot of people out there that believe that kind of road bikes, unless you're a strict road riding person, because basically a gravel bike is a road bike with mountain bike tires on it,
Okay.
and so you get a little bit skinnier, not as big of tires, and so you kind of find the sweet spot in your area because if you have a lot of sand, then you want wider tires,
Okay.
but if it's like hard packed stuff, then you can go a little bit skinnier. And there's people that will ride jumps and stuff on these things. I wouldn't, but it's one of those. They ride like a road bike, so they're fast and sleek, but you can go on dirt roads and on trails. And so these guys, my area, they have a gravel bike ride every Monday night that
Oh,
on
that's
average is
cool.
doing 20 to 25 miles. And I mean, 20 to 25 miles on a mountain bike is doing a lot. And
Yeah.
so on a gravel bike, you knock it out in an hour and a half. And so,
Nice. That's very cool. Uh, Dustin, do you have any upcoming races that you can tell us about?
I don't have any that I'm signed up for.
Okay.
In my area, we do have the Augusta Ironman. That's a half Ironman that I am training towards eventually. I don't think I'm going to get to it this year.
Okay.
So that is my goal eventually to kind of do that one. It seems kind of silly to not take advantage of such a big event that's here local, since I don't have to pay for a hotel and all that stuff.
That's really cool. We
So that
definitely look forward to, continuing to follow your journey. And
oh yeah,
that's so cool. You've got so much cool stuff going, in your personal life and your professional life, with your fitness. I do have one last question for you today,
of course,
Dustin.
yeah.
What does being a catch a lift veteran athlete mean to you?
It feels like it's a life changing experience because you can go to the gym and you can go and hire people to help you, but
Yeah.
most of the times you're putting money in somebody else's pocket. You're not necessarily going into somebody that has a vested interest in you, other
Right.
than how much money are you paying me.
Whereas Catch a Lift really gave me programs and gave me guidance to not only help me succeed, but they also were like, okay, show me what you've done. And so you get that accountability as well. And so knowing that you've got somebody in your corner like that, and can kind of, just help you along, even when you got slow times and you get fat, when you're doing good, and celebrate everything you've done. I mean, it's been an awesome experience.
That's absolutely tremendous to hear, Dustin. And we're so thankful and grateful to have you a part of our Cal community and Cal family. And like I said, we, absolutely thrilled to watch all the great things you're going to continue to do.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm excited. I mean, I said I was going to do the Ironman, but I'm also going to do everything in the middle of here. If I get a chance to do a bike ride or another run or something like that, like I said before, I make it a game, or I make it a challenge to beat.
I love it.
And that's what gets me going. So I look forward to it.
That's so awesome, Dustin. Thank you so much for your service to our great country. Thank you for coming on today, talking with us. It was so very much fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so thankful for another opportunity to highlight one of our amazing veteran athletes. Thank you to all our veterans and supporters for tuning in. A big thank you to Dustin for sharing your story and your light with us all today. It was so much fun getting to talk to you, Dustin. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday live at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for a chance to win Cal Swag and to chat with your brothers and sisters. If you liked today's episode, please be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and leave us a review on your favorite streaming service. Until next week, keep it real and stay Cal strong.